So our next low-fat cake we're going to do is called a Genoise cake. A Genoise cake is based off of a whole egg foam. Remember, our chiffon cake was separated egg foam. This is whole egg foam. So that means I just deal with the egg as the whole. I don't have to whip a separate meringue to it. This is actually the trickiest of all of the low-fat cakes to pull off because it has no chemical leavener in it. It's the densest of all the cakes because our leavener is only the air that we're going to whip into this. So when I do this, I have 10 whole eggs. The eggs should be at room temperature also. You'll notice you'll try to crack the eggs without getting in any shells. Always check your eggs for blood spots. If you have any, you should not use it, of course, because it would contaminate the whole batch. When you're doing any type of foam, the whip always needs to be on the machine. So I'm going to hook this up. I'm going to go ahead and just start to break up my whole eggs. And then what I've done is I've heated my sugar. So sugar that's hot will actually make the eggs, again, just like the chiffon cake, where we whip into just the sugar into the egg whites. Here, my sugar is going to be hot. It will absorb into those whole egg foams, and I'll get beautiful lift. We're going to introduce what's called ribbon stage in this cake. Ribbon stage happens when you're dealing with a whole egg foam, and enough air is going to be whipped in, so it's going to be very pale in color. And it says ribbon stage because when you lift the whip, it kind of goes back and forth like ribbon candy. And the batter's going to sit on the surface for about 3 to 5 seconds before it absorbs back in. So in order to attain ribbon stage, I need whole eggs and I need hot sugar. Now there's 2 ways to get this batter ready. The first is to mix the sugar and the whole eggs over a water bath and then stir them till they're about 110 degrees and then put it on the machine and whip it. That's a little bit more time consuming because you have to stop and you're always stirring the eggs. You can't really do anything else. So the method that I like to teach, and this is what we did in the hotel, is we put our sugar on a sheet pan. I have a little bit of parchment on it. It goes in a warm oven for just about 5 to 6 minutes, just till the palm of your hand can't take the heat anymore. If you see it starting to clump up, you know you need to pull the sugar out of the oven right away because it's about to actually caramelize. So it only really takes about, up to 5 minutes. It's very hot, and then I whip it into my eggs. It's not hot enough to start to coagulate my eggs, just to open up the pores of the eggs so they can start to accept some air. So this has been broken up. I'm going to take my parchment paper. Because my sugar's hot, I'm going to go ahead and just funnel this in. You notice again, just like when I did my egg white meringue for the chiffon cake, I went quite slow because I don't want the sugar to just hit the bottom of the bowl and stay there. I want it to incorporate in. So now I'm going to turn this up, and this needs to whip about 5 to 6 minutes, and then I'll show you ribbon stage. Okay guys, so I want to let you check this. This has only been on about 1 minute, but you can see the color is much more pale, but if I go to pick this up, you'll see how quickly it's falling off of the whip. I'm not even close to ribbon stage yet. So I still have about 4 more minutes to go. I just wanted to stop this so that you can see. A lot of people think, oh, well, the color's getting lighter, it looks a little bit thicker, but this is not yet ribbon stage. This is the critical step that Genoise cake can go bad, because if you under-aerate this, by the time I fold in my flour, it's gonna be very thin like pancake batter. It won't be light and fluffy. So never under-aerate your whole eggs and your sugar. We're looking for, again, ribbon stage. So let's take a look. It's been 3 more minutes. And so let me just undo this. Let's take a look. You can see the color is much more pale. And now I want to check for ribbon stage. So I'm just gonna swirl it. And Lance, if you can shoot in the bowl, you can see that it's sitting on the surface only about 1 second, and it's not really going back and forth in the ribbon yet. So I still have a couple more minutes before I'm getting there. And again, remember, this is a crucial time. I can't under whip this or my Genoise cake will come up very flat. Okay, so let's take a peek now. Now I think we're good to go. So again, I'm just gonna lower this, take the whip off, and let's take a peek. So if we look, when I go ahead and scoop it up, see how light and airy that is? And when it goes onto the surface, you can see how it's sitting there a couple seconds. So this would indicate that I'm at ribbon stage. Remember, light and thick, sits on the surface, and it will go back and forth before it absorbs in. So this is done. So what I want to do now is I want to get this into a mixing bowl, because whenever we fold, we try never to fold in a KitchenAid bowl because they always have that ridge on the bottom, and then you'll end up with flour lumps every single time. So this is going to come out. This looks nice and silky, very fluffy. It almost looks like white chocolate mousse. That means I'm at a good ribbon stage. But food cost, I need to get all of this batter out of here. And I'm going to start to add in my other ingredients. Now again, this is my only aerator, so I need to be as gentle as possible. The only other ingredients I have to add are some cake flour, and I have melted butter for flavor, and I have a little vanilla. Now the book wants you to fold in the butter first and then the vanilla. What happens though, that takes up too much time and your batter could fall. So I'm going to combine this step and just put my vanilla in with my butter. Now the butter obviously is melted, but what happens is I want it to be about the 80 to 90 degree range. If it's too hot and I go to fold it in, it's actually going to deflate my batter. So I melted it, and then I'm letting it go just before it hits the solid. Just again, so it won't deflate everything. Now I'm using cake flour. Again, the weakest of all the flours. The protein is about 7.5%, because I need this to be very delicate. I'm going to do the flour a third at a time. So I need to sift it. So here's my first third. And now, just like we did the chiffon cake, we're going to do a gentle fold. So spatula to the center to 6 o'clock, and I'm rotating the bowl. Instead of egg white streaks, I don't want to have any flour streaks. Okay, so the first third is in. I'm going to take my second third of cake flour, sift it in. Now, some people say you could sift this and all at once and then slowly add it in. What happens when you just start to place it in, it will sink all the way to the bottom. When you sift it in, it kind of just sits on the top of the surface like a gentle snowfall, and that's what we want. We don't want it going all the way to the bottom of the bowl, because then we'll have flour lumps every single time. Now you can see I have very little of my batter that has deflated. That's a good sign. If it was halfway down the bowl already, I know that I'm folding in a little bit too aggressively. Here's my last amount of flour. I'm going to fold it in. Now I'm still going to see a little bit of flour streaks, because remember, I still have my butter and my vanilla to get folded in. So what I'm going to do, because look, this is much heavier than my batter, so I need to, it's almost like tempering with pastry cream. I need to have equal consistency. So I'm going to take a little bit of my batter, and I'm actually going to stir it into my fat. And that, look how much easier that's going to be for me to fold in without that butter going all the way to the bottom of the bowl. I'm going to put this around the edge of my mixing bowl. Now I won't have any butter streaks at all, and I'm going to continue my folding. I'm going to fold until I don't see any flour streaks, vanilla streaks, or butter streaks. So you can see as I'm folding, I'm still getting some flour coming up from the bottom. This happens every time, so that's why we have to go around maybe 15 to 20 times, and just to make sure. And again, my spatula is only going from center towards my body, and the bowl is moving. Now you can see I'm almost there, because look at the color change in the batter. That's the butter that's absorbed in. I have very few, almost no flour streaks at all. I have just a couple little lumps there, and I just broke it up. So this is where you start to see my volume fall. If I were to continue this, it would go all the way down to the bottom of the pan, and then I have overmixed it. So I'm going to do a quick streak, so no flour lumps, quick swipe test, I'm good to go. So because there's no chemical leavener, this is a cake that I have to get into the oven as quickly as possible. So in order for me to prep these pans, it's a little bit different than the chiffon cake. This one we're actually going to use parchment paper. So, but again, I'm going to spray just the bottom, not the sides, because I want the cake to cling. Parchment paper goes down. And then I'm going to spray the parchment paper. Now with the chiffon cake, I didn't use parchment paper at all because air can get trapped underneath that batter because the batter is so light, and then it will fall every time. So this is enough. It's going to yield me 2 8-inch cake pans. These again are going to fill up about 2/3 of the way. Just like the chiffon cake, I'm not going to tap these at all. Now you can see when I did this, I had a little bit of flour that was on the rim of my mixing bowl, so I'm just going to swirl that in. I'm going to swirl in over here, and then guys, I'm going to go straight to the oven. I'm not going to tap this down either, because if you could zoom in, again, look at all of these air pockets. This is our leavening agent. If I were to tap this down, you would see them just start to pop, and then I would lose all of my leavening. See how they're starting to come up to the surface? So this, in addition to a hot oven, will give me great lift. Unlike the chiffon cake, this will not dome, so it's just going to rise up in one solid piece, and hopefully it will be nice and level. So this is going to take about 18 to 22 minutes in our convection oven. If you were at home in a conventional oven, it would take about 30 to 40 minutes. So I'm just going to walk back and put them in the oven. Okay, we're ready to flip these out. So same thing. Just like we do with the chiffon cake, we have to run a knife around it. Now looking again at the difference, the chiffon cake came all the way up to the top of the pan because remember it had baking powder and an egg white meringue. This, my only leavening agent, was the air that we whipped into the whole eggs. So here we go. Now remember, this one also had the parchment paper on it. I'm actually going to leave the parchment paper on because if I'm going to freeze these, it actually gives it a longer shelf life because less air can get to it. So I'm just going to leave this on, and then when it cools completely, I'm going to wrap it. So here we have it, they're out of the pan, so let's summarize how to do the Genoise. So remember, Genoise is based off a whole egg foam, and so 10 whole eggs went into the machine. I had about 6 ounces of sugar. Remember, I had to heat the sugar, so I put it on my half pan. I put it into the oven for just about 4 to 5 minutes till the palm of my hand couldn't take the heat anymore. As that was warming, I went ahead and turned my whole eggs on with the whip just to break them up a little bit. When the sugar was hot, I took it and I funneled it in, and then I turned up the speed of my machine, and remember, I took it to ribbon stage. Ribbon stage, please don't under whip this, so when we do it in class, I'm going to want to see everyone's ribbon stage before you take it off the machine, just to make sure that we don't have any failures. Because Genoise cake might be the hardest thing that we do this whole semester. It's a very tricky cake to get since we're not able to use a chemical leavener. So once I got a ribbon stage, I went ahead and I transferred it to another mixing bowl, and I took my cake flour and I had that ready. I took my butter that was melted and I combined that with my vanilla. That is just speeding up my folding steps when I did that. I set that aside. Remember, butter, I want it to be about 90 degrees. That's perfect. Too hot and it will deflate my eggs. So then I took my cake flour, I sifted in 1/3 of it, I folded that in gently. Remember, my spatula was in the center of the bowl. I pulled it towards my body to 6 o'clock, and the bowl was spinning with my opposite hand. I still saw some flour streaks. I took in my second third, I did the same thing. When I still had just a few flour pieces left in, I did my third amount of flour. I did not fold it all the way again because I don't want to deflate it. At this point, I need to now add my butter vanilla mixture. But I don't want the butter to just seep to the bottom of the bowl. I need equal consistency. So I took about half a cup of my batter. I stirred it into my vanilla and my melted butter so that they were the same consistency, and then I took that and I poured it around the outside edge of my mixing bowl. I folded it in, and remember, that's when you can see the cake batter. It deepened in color. I was starting to lose a little bit of volume, but I'm still folding very gently. Remember, my whole time I went around about 20 times. Once I thought I was good, the color is deep, I'm starting to see volume go down. I did a swipe test. I went from 12 to 6, folded it, rotated my bowl, did another swipe test. If I don't see melted butter streaks, if I don't see flour pieces, I'm good to go. I put it into my cake pan. Remember, this one I prepped. I put parchment down. I sprayed the bottom. I left the sides dry. Again, we need the cake batter to cling to the pan so it doesn't start to fall. They baked for, gosh, I'm going to guess, one baked in 20 minutes, the other baked in about 23, 24 minutes. Remember, these do not have a large dome on them. They bake off almost flat. Touch it, it should feel quite firm. Pull it out onto the sugared parchment paper. Let it cool about 10 to 15 minutes, and then re-invert and cut out. And again, this guy, it doesn't have as long of a shelf life as the chiffon cake because it doesn't have as much sugar in it. This had just about 2 ounces of butter, that's it. The other one had twice the amount of sugar, the chiffon cake, and it had some vegetable oil in it. So this, my shelf life is a little bit shorter in the freezer. This is the cake that we use. It works really nicely for layering. It's not as moist, so that's why you're going to see when we use these Genoise cake, we're going to put a lot of stock syrup or simple syrup down on them. So all I have to